So, welcome. I am calling this segment What's on My Mind. It'll just be a brief story time just to kind of talk about some things that have been going on for me and just sharing them as testimony with the hopes that they actually encourage you. And so, more recently, I have just had so much on my plate just being a caregiver. Excuse me. I am the mother to kids on the spectrum. um, I've also been doing a lot where um, caregiving to an adult parent, not in a way where he is unable to care for himself, but him and my dad and my aunt, they live close by. And we jokingly talk about how I've become their Uber driver just because in their age, um, they're wanting to drive less and do those things less. And they're still very self sufficient, but they're also very much like, hey, can you come help out with this? Because they're not as mobile as they used to be in their younger years, and they're accepting that. Um, and so I've been showing up for that, and very much the caregiver archetype that I am is the version of me that shows up for my clients. And so I have been taking this time to look at playing that caregiver role for myself and being a student as well. A lot of what I'm doing is me just stepping into certain places as the student, learning what I need to learn for myself as a means of healing and caretaking for myself, and not feeling like the things that I learn have to be regurgitated in a space of me making money off of it, right? Um and I just, as always, I have lots of stuff on my plate. I've always been that way. And so went back to therapy. From time to time, I revisit therapy as well. The therapist does go to therapy. And we were talking in one of the sessions, just really about the things that I do, right? What is the load on my plate? What does that feel like for me? How am I handling certain things? Like that kind of conversation. And it was interesting because my therapist pointed out, she's like, you do many things. And she said, I love the fact that you don't mind doing many things. Like you figure out how to express those things in a way that's comfortable for you. And I told her, I said, I'm just getting to that point. Because there's this little thing that people will say, and I think basically it's kind of harmless, but when you pay attention to where it comes from, it's actually not harmless. It's actually kind of a backhanded compliment. But when you are, they say jack of all trades, master of none, um, with the mindset of saying, like, oh, you do all these things, but you can't be good equally at all those things. And then there's also that thing that people say, they'll say, well, what don't you do? Which that mindset is trying to get you to talk about the things you are incapable of doing. Well, you do this and you do this and you do this. What are you not capable of doing? And sometimes people say that with an air of like, oh my gosh, like you can do all these things, like, and it's almost they're asking it rhetorically, what can't you do? as an exclamation, but most of the time that is people saying like, well, what, let's like, can we kind of like, what is it that you're not able to do? And that's an interesting thing, especially in this kind of society, which, I mean, it's capitalist and people want to make money off of your gifts, your time, your talents, and your efforts, right? They want to put you down, put you out like a workhorse and have you do all the things while they make the money. And so I've learned slightly over the years to kind of quietly do these things, um, or to do them in a very disjointed way that kind of separates all the things, right? So, you know, I'm really good at writing. Writing is like one of the things that I'd never gone to school for. It's an innate talent. Never, I mean, I took, I was in journalism in high school or whatever, but I didn't major in any of that. I didn't major in creative writing or anything like that. It's just what flows from me. And I've gotten paid for it over all these years. I'm good at that. Um, I'm good at beauty. My grandmother taught me. I had a hairdresser who worked with me and taught me on certain things, and I'm really good at it. Um, and I could be better if it was something that I was like super focused on, but like just as a raw talent, I'm actually really good at it, at the styling piece. Makeup, I mean, I have an esthetician's license. So, yes, I have a license for skincare, and I went through school and sat before the state board and did all the things. And I could pick that up if I feel like it you know, as a means to make money. But, and I did do that for a while. I did bridal makeup and worked weddings. I did work with photographers doing the makeup for their headshots, so the work was very clean. I freelanced for NARS for a second, which I absolutely loved. Um, and where does it show up now? I mean, when I do photo shoots and things like that, I do my own makeup and styling. It's fun for me, right? But and occasionally, in this era, when my girlfriends are doing something, they're like, "Hey, come do my makeup." I'll do that. I'm really good at cooking and baking, like really, really good at it. Um, there's so many things, right, that I'm actually really good at. And for a period of time, I was picking things up and just like, then I'll try it, I'll do it. I realize I'm good at it, and then just kind of put it down. It's like, oh, I don't feel like doing that anymore. And it got to the point where I would just say, no, I don't do that anymore. No, I don't do hair anymore. No, I don't do makeup anymore. No, I don't do these things. So for the past few years, I braid my own hair every probably like 6 to 8 weeks or so. I put some braids in. Just for protective styling, just because like with the fast paced life that I have with the kids, I don't have time to style my natural hair or kind of keep up with that. Perimenopause is hit, and so everything is hot all the time, and I'd be sweating out my natural hair anyway. Um, and so I had to, and I had some neurological stuff happen where for 3 months I couldn't put my hands over my head, and so putting braids in my hair is almost it's very much my way of giving gratitude to my body, for the fact that I can stand and go back to braiding my own hair. And so, yes, I can do braids. Um, yes, there's like so many things that I'm able to do. And so we were kind of talking about that, in my like areas of expertise, especially when it comes to clinical knowledge and things like that. And we were talking about that. And she was saying, gosh, like you've kind of worked here, 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 you've done this. And she was telling me about some of the stuff that she's done. And I was like, oh man, like, so I'm taking notes from her because I'm like, oh, I never worked that side before. That's so intriguing. So we're talking about all these things. And she was saying, she said, I get really excited just about, hearing some of these things from you because you have this wealth of knowledge. And I said, I don't typically do anything with it all the time. It's just like, oh, okay, these are things that I know. End of story. And so she was like, no, but there needs to be a space where there is a maybe an integration or an intersection of all the things that you've learned. And she said, just start to kind of be aware of where that intersection lives, right? Because there is, she said, nothing that you've done has been it's just, she said, everything you've done has just been a constant expression of who you are. It's just differing expressions. And I said, it's interesting because I feel like, and I've, in this period, I've also gone back to school to get another bachelor's degree, simply because there was a certification that I wanted to build on my current knowledge. And I found out you can't get that certification without the bachelor's degree. And I said, well, if I get the bachelor's degree, that's going to ultimately, that all means more money. And it's basically in a discipline that I did not know was a discipline, but it was a skill and a talent that I've been displaying practically for free. When I would walk into certain clinical jobs, they say, oh, you have this skill? Okay, great. We would love that. And they pay me a little extra, but knowing that it's a whole discipline, there should have been a whole nother level of, of salary. And so we were talking about all of that and how those things, she was just really helping me look at how those things can truly converge and merge and come together more than anything. And so I was telling her, I said, I want to be a bit more fearless about these things because there's still that part of me that I said, there's been so many things over the years that I had a vision for, but then I stopped it, right? Or I let somebody else stop me as I had the vision. I said, when I remember being, oh gosh, I might have been like 6 or 7, and I wanted to be a majorette and I wanted to take dance class. I really wanted to take ballet. And I just remember my parents were like, oh no, they said no. They didn't really say no, but they actually didn't find the space for me to be able to take the classes, and they offered me something else. To this day, I don't know why that is. I even talked it over with my dad. I mentioned it to him and he just kind of looked at me strange because I don't think they realized that that was bothersome for me. Instead of dance, they gave me Girl Scouts. And let me tell you, I enjoyed Girl Scouts. I really did. I was a Girl Scout from 1st grade to 8th grade. I loved it. I loved every moment of being a Girl Scout. And I wouldn't have thought to go to Girl Scouts had my mom not come home and say, hey, do you want to try this? But the reality is I wanted to go to dance class. I remember wanting to take piano classes. And the piano teacher at the first elementary school that I went to, she said, well, it was the music teacher. She said, oh yeah, I do teach piano. I remember asking her. So I had to be around like 1st or 2nd grade. And she said, oh yeah, I teach class. And I remember telling my parents, but I don't remember exactly what happened. I just know that I never took piano classes. I remember wanting to be a majorette. At home in Baltimore, they have like lots of parades and stuff like that. And I wanted to be a majorette. I don't know why that didn't happen. Um, but then the next thing I know is they came home and talked about playing softball. And so softball was presented to me around like fourth grade. We had moved across town by then. So they presented softball. I like softball. I had a good time playing softball. I played from fourth grade fourth grade rec in fourth grade, fifth grade, and in middle school. And I played in high school. I played varsity in high school. But I never got to be the majorette. It's like all the things that I suggested, somebody else was like, no, go over here and go do this, right? I always felt like nobody was hearing me on what I wanted to do. And but it was weird because the alternatives that they selected, like I actually liked them. I didn't hate them. But it wasn't exactly what I said I wanted to do. Then I remember being in high school, and I was telling my therapist about this. I said I was in high school, and the high school that I went to, it merged into, it morphed into being a vocational school. And so they had the vocational side that had like mechanics and cosmetology and daycare. Like they taught childcare and stuff like that. And I remember the child care center, if there were girls in the class in school who had babies by that time, your kid could go to the child care center, and the girls who were getting their child care certificates and stuff would keep your kids during the day. So they were there in the daycare, and there were a couple other programs that were over there. But I remember my grandmother had taught me how to do some basic hairstyling, pressing, curling, coloring, using the Marcel irons, using the old school stove. I knew how to put relaxers in, doing chemicals with the hair, doing coloring with the hair. And then I had a hairdresser who, her mother actually lived across the street from me, and I think her boyfriend lived down the street from me. So I started going to her to get my hair done. And so a lot of times, like I would go to get my hair done, and so she would put me last on the list, on her schedule for the day, and she would let me kind of assist her. I would be like her stylist assistant while I was getting my hair done. So she taught me how to crimp. She taught me how to do scrunchies. She taught me how to do all this stuff. This is the 90s, so crimping, scrunchies, French rolls. She really taught me how to French roll really good. She taught me all these, stuff, and then I'd go home and then I'd, work it and do hair from my mother's basement and everything, right? And so in my mind, what I was prepared to do, because I had decided I was going to Atlanta to go to school, it was decided. In my mind, I said, well, I was in AP classes and honors classes. So by the time I got to my 12th grade year, I didn't really have anything to do per se. I had taken all the classes that I needed to take. And I think I had like math. I had like a math class that was mandatory. It was like math and I think a social studies credit. So literally I had 2 periods of class and that was it. So the rest of the time I remember being a teacher's aide, and I had like a bunch of electives. So that's when I did journalism, I did yearbook. I didn't really have any classes I had to take. And so the counselors was like, you could do co-op. And co-op was the program where you went to school half the day, got a job half the day. So now I don't want to do co-op because I babysit and I do hair and I make more money than my friends. who work at the mall and all these. Like, I don't want to work at a restaurant. No shade to any of my friends who worked at the restaurants, but I was like, why would I do that? I make my own schedule, and I work for myself, and I babysat everybody in the neighborhood since I was 12. I had a babysitting, like steady babysitting clients from the time I was 12. Everybody brought their kids to me. So, like, why would I give up all of that? And I needed, though, that flexibility because I did so many extracurricular stuff. I did stuff with the church. I played sports. And so I wasn't trying to go work like a 9 to 5. I made cash right then. I didn't have to wait till the end of the week for a paycheck. Wasn't nobody taking no money out my check. I made, like, it's cash in hand. Like, why would I? It doesn't make any sense, right? And so so I remember going to the school counselor, and saying, I have this idea. I know I want to go to Atlanta to go to school. I want to work my school schedule where I can take the cosmetology classes during the day, do those 2 classes that I have to take, right? But then I want to spend the rest of the time doing the cosmetology classes because I want to get my license and then transfer my license to Atlanta. But I want to learn all the cosmetology stuff while we're here, and be able to do that. Or if I can't get the license here, at least I can, go to Atlanta and, get the license or whatever. And in my mind, I would have been dual licensed and had a license in Georgia and a license back at home in Maryland. And I remember the counselor looked at me and said, but you're on the college prep track. Why would you want to get a cosmetology license? I said, well, because when I go to Georgia, I want to be able to go find work at a shop, and that'll give me flexibility to make decent money while I'm in school. And I can pick it up however I need to pick it up, right? Because my schedule would very much look the same. And I just remember her just being like, no, that doesn't make any sense. You're college prep. And then them pushing towards, like, go get a job. And I said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. So instead of them listening and trying to help me to cultivate what I was doing, it was, no, that doesn't make any sense. There was a piece where I wish I had asked for advocacy from my mom on that, or I had pushed it. But I didn't push it and I don't know why, but I just knew. I was like, this makes sense to me, right? And so there was this space where, once again, me knowing what I wanted and what I felt was best for me, somebody else, an adult, was like, no, that's not it. You need this over here. And it wasn't what I needed, right? And so I end up in Atlanta doing hair for everybody in the dorm. And there were some spaces, because I was continuously told, like, you're going to go to college and get this degree thing. Why would you want this license? That thing that you want to do that's creative, that you're actually naturally good at, that's a side thing. That's not going to supersede what you do with your degree. And so there were points at which I had friends who were in mass media who would come and say, hey, can you do the hair and makeup while we do our film projects? Oh yeah, I went and I had fun doing that. Never thought to put that under my belt as like a resume builder, because college prep, right? I have to get this degree. This other thing doesn't make a difference. There were so many opportunities. I was telling my therapist, I said, I look at this stuff and I'm like, there's so many things I missed, right? I end up working at a hair salon anyway for about, I think it was almost 2 years, as a stylist assistant, simply because I had gone down the street found this stylist. She cut my hair short into this asymmetrical cut with the taper in the back, and then I had gone and I colored my hair. I think at that time it was fuchsia plum, and I would mix it with like this magenta color and do like a color gradient with it. And so I was on the bus one day, saw this stylist, and he said, "Oh, who did your hair?" And I was like, "Me." And he's like, "Huh, I need a shampoo girl," 'cause that's what they called him at the time. I said, "Okay, cool." Started working at the shop with him. Other stylists figured out what I could do. I was doing the roller sets and the thinning hair treatments. One of the girls taught me how to box braid. That's why I still braid my hair to this day. I learned so much. And then once again, here comes an opportunity that I passed up, and I passed up the opportunity and didn't ask more questions because of what had been drilled in my head, right? And so I remember the lead stylist, who was like an owner by that time, or part owner. She said, "Well, you have to have an apprenticeship to continue to work here, because the state board is going to come and like kind of, you know, they're clamping down on certain things." And I said, "Well, I regurgitated what had been told to me. I'm in college or whatever." And so she never pushed it after that. She said, "Okay, if you're not going to get the apprenticeship, then fine." Really, I wish that had gone another way, where she explained, like, "Girl, you've already been working here for a year and a half. We can sign for your stuff and you can go sit before a state board. We could prep you for a state board so you could go ahead and get your license," right? Because really, I had been there like it was almost 2 years by that time. And an apprenticeship is about, I think, like 16 to 17 months, 16 to 18 months or something. So I had already pretty much worked that. And they could have signed for me, but they were just like, "Oh no, if that's what you say you're gonna do, ain't nobody gonna push you." I ended up getting an esthetician license later. But I'm telling my therapist, I said, I look at these situations and I look at where my intuition was somebody, like, I let another situation override my intuition. And I'm not saying that things haven't worked out for me. I'm simply saying that there were paths that I did not take because I let other voices override my intuition. And so now I told her, I said, I'm in this phase of my life where I'm just like, oh, if I see that, I'm going to go try it. I'm just going to go do it. If something is leading me to it, if something is kind of drawing me to it, I'm like, okay, let me go over here and just, try this out. Let me look at this. Let me see what this is. And so there have been situations where, just even with my writing, like I said, I'm not a professionally trained writer, but I've joined a writing critique group, and they're all like, "Hey, like, you're actually really good at, like, that's your first draft? Okay." So I'm learning how to polish things and everything like that, being in that critique group. And it's also pushed me um to just kind of leap, right? And so I applied for this one thing for the city. There was like this writing position, and I was like, why would I even apply for this? Like a friend sent it to me and was like, "Hey, you need to apply for this." And I was like, this doesn't even look like, I don't even look like, I don't feel like I have the skill for that. Like, why would I do this? And I said, you know what? Shits and giggles. Let me apply for it. And I did, and I got it. I actually went to, I had to just, write up like a little proposal, send that in. And then they approved them. It was like, "Hey, we kind of like this idea. Come to this day workshop where we're going to flesh ideas out with all the other creatives." And as far as the writers go, I think there were about 10 people in the running, and then they broke it down to, I think it was like 5 of us there at the workshop, and me and one other girl beat out the other people. And I got the job, and it's paid. Hey, And so there's this other thing that came across my email, and I actually clicked on it and I was like, huh. And I kept saying, nope. Like, I'm looking at that, like, no, that doesn't. And then I stopped and I said, nope, I'm going to apply for this simply because energetically, I know I'm what they want because I'm reading the stuff and looking at what they're saying that they want as far as the type of person who would do that gig. And then I started looking at other things that I do, and I said, okay, that's not professional and polished, but it is the skill, and the skill is transferable. So I'm going to highlight that when I send in my my RFP, request for proposal. So, just in talking to my therapist, I've started to look at all the places where I just kind of have been letting those voices override my intuition, or just, letting that voice become my voice, where I'm like, oh no. And I start saying the things that it's like, oh no, you can't do that, or you haven't been professionally trained for this, or you haven't done that. I said, no, I'm going to go ahead and apply for this next writing job based on the writing job that I just got for the city. That counts. Now that's a resume builder. That's going to help. Right. But I share this path and I share this journey because I think this is how so many of us get to shoulda, coulda, woulda, and get to what ifs, or start feeling unfulfilled. It's like, well, what if I had taken that path, or what if I these things had worked out? And even I said, it's like, gosh, I wish I had spoken up more or advocated for myself more in this space. Well, okay, you didn't do it then, but how can you do it now? Right? If you didn't do it then, there's nothing you could do about that. But how can you advocate for yourself now in this space where you currently are? Right? You know, I didn't get to take the piano. I didn't get to take the dance class. Well, guess what? I started going originally to the pole studio because I was like, I'm going to maybe do pole. But then I got into doing the lap dance class and doing some other things there with the girls in the studio. And it taught me, like, okay, you can do these things, right? Like, so I ended up tapping into that anyway. I mean, I got the aesthetics license versus the cosmetology license, but I still got my beauty license and I still maintain that license. I mean, yes, I want to still take the piano classes and I got time to, like somewhere in there, when I have a free space, I'm going to incorporate that and try the music classes. But then it's so now more than anything, it's like not looking at those spaces that you didn't do with a sense of regret. It's like, okay, those things didn't happen. How can you now in your life to do that for yourself, right? This is what that's about. Maybe, and when I mentioned it to my dad, I just remember him, and this was recently that I mentioned it to him. He kind of looked at me and was like, oh. And I said, yeah, you guys just kind of said no for whatever reason and just kind of moved on. But it was literally something that I really, really wanted to do. And so yeah, I'll do it for myself now. Like, I don't hold that against anybody or whatever, but and who knows, it could have been financially a constraint. um it could have been that they just didn't have the vision, and the only thing that they knew were these concrete things, so they're like, oh yeah, she can come over here and do this. I mean, my dad was a track star in high school, so he knew sports, right? um so they gravitate you towards what they know versus sometimes versus what is possible. That counselor in high school is, she didn't have vision. She didn't have vision. She didn't have foresight. And she was probably doing what her job entailed for her to do. It's like, no, If you're college prep, this is what you're on. You don't like, they don't know sometimes how to make concessions or how to create space or how to do something outside of what they are taught to do. And I hold no grudges against all of those things. Even the shop owner, it's just like that wasn't her place to necessarily advocate for me when I wasn't advocating for myself. Would it have been nice? Yes, it would have been nice for her to just be like, girl. But if that wasn't her prerogative, that she gave me the offer and literally I turned it down, and it doesn't matter why I turned it down. It just matters that it was like, no, okay, well, she's got to move on with what she's doing. It's not anybody's place to have to advocate for me. It's my place to have to advocate for myself. And so I talk with my therapist about that, about being in the space right now where I'm putting myself in these places where I at least try, where I at least step out. And whatever happens from there happens. I mean, you know, the most people my mother used to always tell me, just go ask, and the most they could say is no, and you'll be right back where you were in the first place. Like, you didn't go anywhere. That's fine. You also didn't lose anything. But just try. And most of the time a no is like a first step to a maybe, and then you can you're on somebody's radar. So that's what's been on my mind today. I want you guys to kind of think about, how that testimony may be relevant in your life, or how it may resonate with you, and just how you can start to, instead of living with regret, just more so live in from a place of like, hey, that didn't work out that time. How can I work it out for myself now? What do I want things to look like today? Because today is all you got. Today is all you got.